Ooh. Oh. So I went ahead and I started off with some gum paste that I dyed red. And to dye it red, I just used a toothpick and I kneaded it in until I got the desired color. So added and kneaded until I got the color I wanted. And then I dusted my rolling pin with some powdered sugar, but then I ended up using my marble table to flatten out the gum paste. At the end of it, I just didn't want to fight with all that powdered sugar inside of my gum paste. So I have these little flower cutters and there's my little helper. He went ahead and he used his little tiny fingers and he used a rolling pin to cut out the flower shapes out of the gum paste. Thanks, baby. So now it's time to make the flowers. So I went ahead and I used my little ball tool here, and I'm just using this to flatten out of the petals of the flower. So you just want to get the edges as thin as you can, but not too thin to where it's like super floppy, just thin enough to where it resembles a flower petal. So you want to do this and you want to flip over your gum paste every now and then because you don't want it to stick. A little trick here, if you don't have one of those ball tools, you can also use the edges of your rolling pin and just go around in circles, and that also flattens it out. And if you don't want to use your rolling pin, you can also just use the tips of your fingers. Your choices are literally endless. Okay, so for some of the flowers, I actually pinched the edges of them, and that's because, no flower is perfect. So now you want to just take some water and wet the middle of the flowers, and then you want to go ahead and you want to fold them in half on top of the water, on top of itself. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to begin rolling. So you want to first start rolling it as tight as possible, and then right after that you want to begin rolling it loosely, and you want to just start opening up the petals as you go. So roll, open up the petals. Roll, open up the petals in that order. Okay, so you could leave it right here, but I decided to make it a little bit more bigger. So I started off from where I started and I added water on the end of the strip of the flower, and I just began rolling and opening up the petals, rolling and opening up the petals. So these are basically two strips put together. And that's basically what it looks like when you have two rolled in one. And I just cut off the end, so when I added it to my cake it wasn't looking all lopsided and weird. These are 3 different flowers that I made. 2 are made out of chocolate on the right and 1 is gum paste. Okay guys, so the part of the cake that was the glitter cake, it was not real. I went online and I bought this dummy cake, and what I'm doing right here is I'm just cutting off the edges because every time I added the fondant, the edges were so sharp, it just cut the edges right off. So I just decided to trim the edges down. So to keep it sticking, I just added some frosting to my Lazy Susan. Also some frosting to the dummy cake, and I didn't even do it all fancy. You can see I just did it all choppy. I just wanted the fondant to stick onto the dummy cake as much as possible. Clear! I swear, every time I use these, I feel like I'm using defibrillators. The life of a nursing student. But I'm just using my fondant smoothers to smooth the fondant on the cake. Alright, so here's my favorite part, the glitter. So what I did was I just wiped down the dummy cake with some simple syrup, and I basically took another brush and I just flocked my glitter all over the cake. But I do wish I started on the sides of the cake instead of the top. This just made it a lot easier for me. It would have made it a lot easier for me to handle the cake and start with the sides, but oh well, I got it done. So moving on to my real cake supplies, I went ahead and I made my own cake boards. I just measured it out on a piece of poster board using the cake pans itself, and then I covered them in foil. So then I went ahead and I already made the cakes. This one is obviously red velvet. I am terrible at making my own cakes like homemade, so I just did the box version. And I'm just right here, I'm just using my leveler to cut it. And this is just some simple syrup that I made homemade. This is something I can do. And this is just to keep the cakes nice and moist under the fondant. Now it's time to crumb coat the cakes and then chill them. So I went ahead and I added some frosting to the Lazy Susan and to my cake board. And this is just to stop it from slipping and sliding. I went ahead and I piped around some cream cheese frosting around and inside of the cake. And then I added some white chocolate shavings to the cake also. And these are just red because that's the color I got them in. They're the candy melts. I just had some leftover. Then I'm going to go ahead and do a really quick crumb coat. And then I use my bench scraper just to help me lift it up so I can go ahead and freeze it. My little brother makes the stupidest noises ever, but after it was done being frozen a little bit, I just left it in there for about 10 minutes just so it can firm up a little bit, and then I just added the second coat of cream cheese frosting. So I went ahead and I did this for both of my cakes. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and use my rolling pin to add the fondant to my cake. I'm just going to go ahead and lay it right over. And I'm sorry about the refocusing. My phone is tripping. So like I said, the same process with the other cake. We're going to go ahead, we're going to level, pipe around the rim, and the only reason I really need a pipe around the rim for this one is because I am adding a filling. I really wanted a pineapple upside down cake, and this is one I made. The filling is homemade, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to fill the cake with that. Go ahead and put the recipe and the directions inside the description box of the filling. So I crumb coated and I chilled and I put the fondant on the square cake. So now I'm using this little diamond maker, that's what I'm going to call it. And I'm just using that to put the indents in my cake. And then I'm getting this pattern maker and I'm using this to add the patterns into the cake. So it looks like it's quilted. And then I got some glitter dust and I just mixed it up with some lemon extract, and this just added a sheen to the cake. So it was like 10 o'clock at night and I was not about to go to Walmart just to get silver beads to fill in the spaces. So I went ahead and I just got some piping gel, my ball tool, and I used that to indent the little circles into my cake. And I went ahead and I got these silver sprinkles and I just packed them into the little holes. I think it worked out just as well. And then of course I added my dowels to add support, and then I just began assembling the cake. So this part is kind of self-explanatory. I basically just assembled my cake, and then to hide my imperfections I added some ribbon to the bottom and I just tied a bow around them. And then I also got my mom's crystal K. I put that on top and I added some extra silk flowers on top. And everybody, this is 2 days worth. This was the finished product. My mom was super happy with it. I was super happy with it that I actually finished it. So thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Bye.
It's still on the table. Oh shit! Oh shit! What? What the hell? Oh shoot!
Happy birthday!
Wait! Oh snap!
Oh, snap.
Wait, no, you're gonna mess it up. Oh, that is really freaking pretty. Yeah. What the hell?
I helped with this all layer. I helped with the flowers on top.